I never expected to wake up on a quiet Saturday morning to the sound of heavy machinery coming from my backyard. At first, I thought one of the neighbors was having some landscaping done, but when I looked out my kitchen window, I nearly dropped my coffee. A crew of contractors had already unloaded lumber, concrete blocks, and construction equipment directly onto my property. They had marked sections of my backyard with spray paint, and a small excavator was digging into the ground just a few feet away from my fence. I rushed outside, still in my pajamas, and asked what they thought they were doing. One of the workers calmly replied that they had been hired by the president of the Homeowners Association to build a community storage shed and a decorative fence extension because, according to her, this section of land belonged to the HOA. I immediately told them they had made a huge mistake because every inch they were standing on was part of my deeded property. The foreman looked uncomfortable and said he was simply following the paperwork given to him by the client. Before I could say anything else, a familiar luxury SUV pulled into my driveway. Out stepped Karen, our self-appointed queen of the neighborhood. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, carrying a clipboard, and smiling like she had already won. Without even greeting me, she announced that I needed to stop interfering with an official HOA improvement project. I asked her what gave her the authority to bring construction equipment onto my land without my permission. She confidently waved a stack of papers in my face and declared that she had all the legal documents proving the HOA owned that portion of my backyard. According to her, my fence had been installed several feet beyond the true property line years ago, and she was simply reclaiming HOA land. I laughed because I had purchased the house only 3 years earlier, and before closing, I paid for a professional survey that clearly marked every property corner. Karen rolled her eyes and claimed my survey was outdated. She insisted that the HOA had recently conducted its own investigation and determined that the neighborhood records had been incorrect for years. I asked to see the official survey. Instead, she showed me a poorly printed map with crooked boundary lines and no surveyor's seal. Even someone with no real estate experience could tell it looked suspicious. When I pointed that out, Karen became louder, saying homeowners always think they know better than the HOA. She even threatened to fine me for delaying the project. By then several neighbors had gathered to watch the argument. Some looked confused while others quietly whispered because Karen had a reputation for making up rules whenever it suited her. I called the county property records office and explained what was happening. They advised me to stop any work immediately and contact local law enforcement because unauthorized construction on private property could become a civil and criminal matter depending on the circumstances. I informed the foreman that there was an ownership dispute and that continuing work could expose his company to liability. To his credit, he ordered his crew to shut down the equipment until everything could be verified. Karen exploded. She accused the contractors of breaching their contract and threatened to sue them if they left. The foreman calmly replied that he wasn't risking his business over questionable paperwork. Karen then claimed she would simply hire another contractor who wasn't afraid to stand up to selfish homeowners. About 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy arrived. I showed him my deed, the certified property survey from my closing documents, and the permanent survey markers still visible along the property line. Karen confidently handed over her documents, insisting they proved HOA ownership. The deputy spent several minutes looking through both sets of paperwork before asking Karen a simple question: "Who prepared this survey?" She hesitated before saying it had been